You ready?
I'm ready.
Welcome. Happy Friday. Welcome back to Aggressively Healthy Podcast. Mike, Marco, at
Marcus.
Marcus.
Don't forget.
Behind the scenes.
Triple M.
Triple M. And here we are again. So, I think in regards to healthcare and topics in healthcare, it's always interesting because it's a constant conversation everywhere. Like anywhere you go these days, people are discussing new innovations to health. How do we do more in terms of prevention? And it seems like the time to take action is kind of now. And it's becoming not a trend, but a hotter topic for healthcare because I do think people are starting to realize what they're missing out on. Interesting kind of new stuff in the news is starting to get into the average population who might not have always sought healthcare information, but now it's kind of getting fed to them. So with that being said, I think we're starting to experience more people interested in this environment.
Well, it's also, I think it's becoming so prevalent because of the disparity between, the state of chronic disease,
Yeah.
the prevalence of chronic disease, and not the commensurate matching of any true health care for said chronic diseases.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now you're getting sicker people that are starting to realize that they can't get the care that they want and understanding that they have to seek alternatives.
Yeah.
And now social media, the way it is like supply demand 101. It's like, oh, you guys want to know about TRT? You guys want to know about peptides? You want to know about keto? And all of a sudden, the information they're looking for or hope to be looking for is flooding their sensory systems.
Right.
So like and this is how the algorithm works. Like you plug in something or you like something, and then all of a sudden your feed is constant bombardment with information.
Yeah.
And there's lies the next problem is that there's so much information. What do you listen to? How do you actually make it actionable? And how do you know that it's working or not?
Right.
Or is it a short-term fix, not a long-term solution? And I think that's where, because it's funny, we talked about this. So I was on a podcast last week. Shout out to Anthony Renna for having me on. But it was really the podcast is about the business of fitness and coaching and stuff like that. And he was intrigued with what we were doing. And not to speak on your behalf, but I talked about the professional journey or personal origin story of being lifelong friends and where you were professionally, but you can speak firsthand to the deficits of being a high level surgeon, knowing I'm not really fixing anything.
Right.
So the shortcomings of what you're capable of doing and providing for these people are literally limited to the OR.
Well, and one thing I always thought about that it always bothered me, and it's like a torturous kind of thought in your brain to think about, especially as a physician in medicine, with your morals driving you to just treat everybody and you need to fix everything that comes your way. But if you really analyze the system, it's completely backwards. For instance, if you spend your entire life drinking, doing drugs, whatever it might be, and you show up at a hospital and you have taken no accountability of your health leading up to that episode, and you walk in an emergency room department door because your gallbladder aches or you're having chest pain, you are instantly seen, taken care of, and if you're having a heart attack at that point in time, you are rushed to a suite where an angio is done and your life is saved. That's wonderful. But then why is that immediate care given to someone with no accountability of their health who then has an issue? But if a random person at the age of 25 who's been paying into the system with their money wants to go get that exact same cardiac angiogram done that the dying non-accountability guy had as an investigation into their health for preventative care, that person is told no. So if you think about it, access to preventative care essentially right now is zero. There is no preventative care in the hospital. And what triggered that thought is what you said is the only place to intervene in a hospital is when it gets so bad that you are forced to deal with the doctor. But if you want to initiate encounters with doctors for preventive care, that's not even on your table. And the root cause of that illness, right, the foundational basis of why the healthcare system is messed up in that instance, is because if you go to a PCP who says, we accept all insurances, you know what that means? You're walking into a place where your healthcare is being dictated by the cost of expenditure of the insurance company on you relative to how long they think you'll live. So if they think you'll live to 70, they're going to invest very little in you. And they're going to withhold only one visit a year. You only get a couple sets of labs. None that are truly investigatory into like chronic disease. All of those labs are purely markers for, oops, now we got to change something, right? Waiting for disaster to happen. So until either the insurance company gives in or doctors get sick of just watching people get sick and die, and the only option you have is to duct tape, or until the consumers open your freaking eyes. Like if every consumer, I mean, think about this. It'll never happen, but if everybody in the United States one day just said, I'm not paying for health insurance anymore. Literally every single human removed themselves from the insurance world and said to the doctors of the world, hey, we'll pay cash, come up with a new pricing scheme. It would happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
You'd have to do it. Because doctors can't find another job. They'd have to keep working, right? Like you can't just be a surgeon and the next day you're making the same amount of money running around town as a chef, right? You don't have that skill set. So you have to stay in medicine. They're going to want to provide. The hospitals have to give in. Insurance companies will realize, well, they're going to go broke in about 3 months, right? But something has to give. So, and I don't know the specific answer, but I do know one of the solutions that me and you have come up with in thinking over the past 5 years, which is starting to work out pretty well for the consumers, is this. And preventive care has to be sought out, not within the walls and confines of an insurance-based hospital system, but outside those walls in a place like this.
But honestly, because I mean, it's not like you walked out of residency or medical school thinking like one day you're going to be having an office in the gym. So
Never.
like, where do you think, like, if you can track back to medical school, especially now, looking at what you're doing compared to what you were doing, compared to where it started, what is the educational deficit where people don't even consider to ask the question, is this correct?
Yeah, the deficit
Like,
is...
Is it such almost like a grooming of like, hey, if this problem exists, it's got to be met with a pharmacological.
So there's like
intervention, right?
multiple pieces of bait. The first piece of bait is when you get into medical school, they make it seem like you've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, right? And yes, I think you do need to be a little bit different than somebody else to become a doctor, but it's a skill set, right? And I know a lot of doctors that if you put them on a boat would crash the boat, right? Like their skill set, just because you're a doctor, doesn't translate all around. It's another set of skills. So the bait is, once you get into medical school, they're like, oh, you made it here, and you're like, oh my God, right? I crossed that finish line. Thank God I'm here. Thank God they accepted me. Thank God they accepted me. And then you get there, and you are so thankful that the medical institution allowed you to even participate and maybe become a member of their special club where then maybe you'll make a little bit of money and maybe, right? So now you're in this classroom with that emotional feeling and you have a doctor standing in front of you lecturing. Whatever they say becomes Bible, right?
Sounds like hazing. You
Well,
know, like you're
it's in-
stressed, you're tired,
Yeah,
you want
I
to
mean,
be part of the club. Like
It is the worst
Yeah.
version of it, right? Because it starts day one of medical school. I mean, I walked in to my first biology lecture and was told the first test we take here is an 80-20 pass. And everyone was like, all right. And he was like, 80% of you will pass, 20% of you will fail. And everyone's like, all right. And he goes, I'm just warning you, the 20% that fail, after you get that grade, please don't come discuss anything with us. Just pack your bags and you leave. That was a statement. So imagine instantly, now you pass that first test, anything they say to you, you're going to be like, yep, I just want to get through here. Okay, so now you do that test. You get through that. You finish medical school, whatever they teach you. Now you get to residency. First day you walk in, you're an intern, you know nothing. There are nice, there are not nice. There are the same way as sports, right? There's different ways to nurture the individual, but you will learn whatever that team teaches you. So if you are on the Chicago Bulls in the 90s, you learned to play basketball with Michael Jordan under Phil Jackson. That is a very different version of if you grew up and then you became in the NBA and you played under, I don't know, another coach at another team. But you become so ingrained in that style. And they indoctrinate you. Now, the entire system, from start to finish, is funded for and bought by pharmaceuticals and hospitals. Almost in an incestuous way, but it's kind of how they had to build it. And then once they started realizing the money they could make off it, then it became what it is now, which is purely an assembly line of average healthy people. Until they get sick, they can pluck them, operate, make a little money, put them back in the system. Pluck them, fix them, put them back in the system. It's a conveyor belt. And the hospital is essentially quality control, where they pull you off the life conveyor belt, and if anything's egregiously wrong, fix it and put you back on. And if you fall off, you fall off, because on average, everyone's going to kind of make it to 70. And nobody's going to hold them to the fire. Nobody's going to the insurance companies and telling them, hey, when I was 17, if you let me get that cardiac angiogram that you wouldn't pay for, I would have known I was going to have a heart attack when I was 30. And I wouldn't be the 1% that everyone's like, oh, we lost a good one, because we would have caught it. But you know what? That's too much money to screen everybody at that age. They won't make money on that, so they're not gonna. And that's kind of the institutionalization of it, driven by pharma and hospital systems. It's built to service sick people. It is not built to maintain.
It's funny because we were at a business seminar last year or 2 years ago, I forgot now, but they always talk about like 3 wins. Like there's usually 3 parties involved, and you
Right.
want everyone to win. So right now, if you're talking about like there's the consumer, there's the institution of hospital medicine, and then there's the pharmaceutical industry.
Right.
It's like there's 2 big wins and like a maybe at best, you know.
At best.
At best. You know, because again, like, we're not trying to dismiss the point of it, but as it in the context of chronic disease, chronic illness, there hasn't been a viable option for getting in front of it and at least slowing the rates of chronic disease and chronic illness.
Right. And
coming back, like, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but coming back to what you see, why this was something that you really thought. Because let's be honest, you were a top surgeon at a very reputable hospital, and you're like, F it, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
So obviously this had, like, you weren't just taking a leap of faith, but you saw the gaps maybe being filled differently with a more comprehensive system of care, you know, driven by your ideology or your knowledge base of human biology, but how this is supplemented through training and nutrition,
And
all the
without
stuff we're
that,
talking about.
it's really nothing. But I think if you really want to become healthier, you cannot go through the regular system. And by healthier, we've come to an agreement now that means not regressing, either staying the same so that your biological age remains and your chronological age might increase, but your biological age stays the same. And that's a big deal. But to do that, you have to look outside that hospital-based system. And I think the ideal situation is this, where you have medicine and a gym. Because even if the connectivity isn't like second to second, like every client we have, we are on it all day. Every client that walks in this office has to walk through a gym by design.
Yeah.
And we talk about it every once in a while. Everybody's like, why would you have an office in a gym? That's going to turn some people away. And listen, when you have an opinion on something, not everyone's going to like you. My opinion on this is if you can't get up enough nerve to walk through a gym to go to see a healthcare provider, then I'm not the healthcare provider for you.
Yeah.
Because I get to have a choice too. Remember, when I left hospital medicine, 99% of that was because I want to choose who I work with also. Because I'm sick of sitting across from people being like, please be healthy, and they don't listen. Then don't listen. I don't care. And I tell every client in here, the harsh reality is like, if they die, I don't. I'm in control of myself. They're in control of themselves. I can lead them to the water. I can help them. But I can't make them be healthy. And the beauty of this environment is if they're not on board with that, I can tell them to leave, which is what I want them to do when they're not engaged. I don't want to work with people that have no interest in their preventative health care. There's a system for people like that. But if you want to be a higher functioning individual, if you want to be healthier, if you do want to seek health care, then this is the place to be. And now the scary thing to me, the sad thing is, anytime I discuss, there's definitely discussions that are delayed because of cost, right? People are like, well, I want to manage how I'm going to pay for all this, how are we going to do this, how are we going to engage? No problem. The sad thing to me is when people sit here and they're like, let me go do a little research on my own and I'll get back to you to see if this is what I want to do. The fact that the healthcare system has been so unreliable, and I don't care what study you do. You can go do census, you can go do polls, you can go do conscious studies where people engage in a survey or whatever. The biggest data set out there is the unconscious survey, which is the fact that MD, WebMD, Google Doc, all this shit exists. All you need to know is that exists. That means the medical system has failed in direct education of the human consumer. Because if they didn't fail, and you had a good rapport with your PCP, and information was delivered to the population in the appropriate manner with both sides of data sets, without biased opinions, people wouldn't do that. It would be like before when doctors were more trusted by their consumer, where they went to the family doctor and they took care of you.
Right.
Because what you should do is walk in here and pay for less concern. Because you should pay for the peace of mind to know that somebody else is worried about things you might not even know to worry about, and they're watching your back. That's a trust issue, right? Like if I pay to get on a plane, I'm buying into the fact that that pilot is well enough trained, that the CEO of that company has enough people under them to micromanage and make sure each pilot's doing their thing, each plane is up to speed. I'm paying because I trust that airline to do that, or else I would never get on the plane. So imagine if the airline industry started suffering increase in crashes, right? 1 plane a day, 3 planes a day. Say it got to the point where, I don't know, 3 to 5% of every flight that took off ended in a crash. You think the airline industry would do well?
Yeah, right.
Have you looked at the statistics of chronic disease, mortality rates and hospitalizations and things like that? Go look, it's scary. You would never get on the healthcare plane, right? They're all crashing. Chronic disease is through the roof. If you go to a hospital, the chance of you dying is pretty high from a chronic ailment, right? So we need to change something. And I think we have the solution, truly, because what I have seen and hear so far is success, right? Diabetic success, hypertensive success, weight success, cancer success, bone density success, everything. Why? Because the data of the labs holds them accountable no matter what. And then your model at the gym holds people accountable to exercise. And together, that's what you do, right?
Well, it's funny that before you were talking about like biological versus chronological age.
Yeah.
And we have a huge emphasis on muscle mass. Like that's something that we look at from a few different vantage points, which also connects to like some keys of longevity, if you want to use that word. You have muscle mass, muscle strength, and VO2, right?
Right.
And that becomes very centralized in how we're looking at individual care and treatment programs, correct? Where is that information? Let's just start at the medical school level. Like, what did you learn about muscle?
Nothing.
Like origin, insertion, action?
Origin, insertion, and that it contracts with fibrils that run, the whole myosin,
Yeah.
light chain, all these
sliding
things.
filament
Correct,
theory.
all that. Nothing related to chemical function.
To actual health, though.
Purely a mechanical structural organ. That's it.
So not even how it
Nope,
influences endocrine. No.
It stores glycogen, it burns carbs. But in its isolated room.
Yeah.
Not how it relates to the rest of the body. Now, how about this? Somebody will have, this is what blows my mind. Somebody will have muscle atrophy from a neurologic disorder. We go and do muscle biopsies to find out what's wrong because the muscle becomes important if it's atrophying, and we want to look for muscle diseases in these people with atrophying muscles because structurally we're worried they won't be able to carry their bodies anymore. When the bigger issue should be, why are we not biopsying people's muscles to be like, hey, look how shitty your muscle is. It's full of fat. You have like 3% mitochondrial versus the 80% you need. Like, why aren't we doing metabolic checks on people's muscles?
Yeah.
Show them. But the prevention of that, muscular intervention, a VO2 max, I didn't even know what a VO2 max was till like a couple of years, like college sports, maybe it was mentioned, and then beyond that, it's been the last couple of years.
But not integral to medicine.
So the funny thing is I went through, also relative to a DEXA scan, I went through medical school, residency, being an attending. I have to say, I think I saw maybe one DEXA done or some bone density reading done preventatively, maybe one. But I didn't even know that was an option for preventative care.
And how many years?
I don't know.
15?
Yeah, 15. And then I remember as a resident and an attending, if someone mentioned this person's going to get a DEXA scan, nobody even really knew what it was. And it was one of those machines like, we don't really use that much. That's just for like women if they break their bones a lot, we put them on that. That's it. No screening. An RMR, come on. Cognitive brain function. When's the last time you went to your primary care or any doctor and you got a cognitive assessment to how well you've progressed through life with your brain function? When was the last time? Never.
0.
How many times do they assess your children? Because I just paid $6,000 for my kids to get a fucking psychological assessment. No disabilities, thank God, but a little wild, right? But when's the last time you had to pay money for that? Never, right? So they don't check us. Once you get past high school, you're just, I guess, average.
You're good. Good enough.
Oh, no. But that dementia that set in when he was 70, we didn't see that coming. That must be some rare neurologic disorder, right? Come on. At some point, you got to look in the mirror, doctors, and start assessing yourself for how hypocritically ridiculous we look.
Yeah.
And the oldest analogy I can't get over, I just can't do it, because I'd love if an OBGYN would come on here and discuss this with me. But if you can tell a 55-year-old woman, don't take hormone replacement because it causes cancer, but at the same time you have a 13-year-old with a bleeding period, over the phone you tell to the parents, yeah, we'll just start them on some hormone replacement called birth control because that period sucks. They'll be on there till they're 60 years old. Please, OB, I would love to discuss.
It's funny you bring that up because, before the show, I sent you an article about alcohol and how it relates to cancer.
Yeah.
Right?
Shocking.
And like, okay.
Thanks.
Sure, thanks for the info. We all kind of knew that it wasn't great. But how does something like, hormone replacement therapy that doesn't cause cancer have such a strong hold on medical opinion, medical intervention, medical care? Like, how does that something persist like that? And when was that the Women's Health Initiative conducted? Mid-90s?
Women's Health was, mid-90s on, 2002 was produced. But it was years of data, yeah. I'm going to say something, maybe this lasts in the archives forever and it'll hold true. I do believe the reason the hormone replacement world and this world of medicine is not further pushed by the current version of medicine, it's purely because it's a direct influencer on their bottom line. Direct. Like if right next to this gym was a building that only made money on really bad sports injuries, they would not want you training people in here to avoid sports injuries, right? So why would the medical institution want people not going to the hospital to receive care for heart attacks, diabetes? I mean, go look on an endocrine doctor's roster, please. Actually, I would love a viewer to do this. If there's any endocrinologists out there in the world that are office-based, send me the next month of your appointments, void of names, ID numbers, and whatever, and show me the reasons those people are coming. Diabetes, 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 maybe the random multiple endocrine neoplasia, maybe the random some endocrine disorder, who knows? Then it's back to diabetes, 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 right? So if you have all...
And predominantly type 2,
yeah.
I'm assuming.
And how do you run a successful business? You get recurring customers, or you increase each customer's value, right? What do you think the hospital's doing? Recurring customer, great. There's a shot you're going to need forever. Here's a pill. You got to come visit me in the hospital every day. Oh, you're getting sicker. You're aging poorly. Oh, yep. Recurring, recurring, recurring. Oh, your diabetes. Now you need a cardiac cath. It's the problem with the diabetes. It's not your fault. It's your sugar. Oh, now we do a cardiac cath. 60 G's. All right. We've cathed you twice. There's no more vessel left for us to release our stent. We got to do an open heart. 120 G's. Post-cardiac surgery, because you were a diabetic and you're not so healthy because you didn't really work out and build muscle, so you're going to have to go to cardiac rehab. 80,000. Oh, you just left cardiac rehab. You're going to have to come see me every 3 months. We're going to have to do stress echoes just to make sure and see how you're doing. Oh, you fell. Okay, you're going to go back to rehab. You see how that goes?
Yeah.
Recurring fee, over and over and over. And it's crazy because we just let it happen. It's right in front of us. And the biggest lever we talk about all the time is obesity and diabetes. You get rid of obesity and diabetes, I bet our national budget gets balanced with the money spent on medicine. It's such an overwhelming cost that if you were an outside consulting firm and you walked in on the United States and said, where are we making cuts? It would be hospital care. Because you'd be like, well, those people are killing themselves anyways, right? 60%. So they're going to have to learn how to survive better because we can't take food out of our children's mouths to feed sick people. And that's what we're doing. We're avoiding preventative care in the youth to stage an appearance that we're taking care of people in their elderly years. But all we're doing is extending their lives statistically, but their quality's crap, and we're sicker as a population. We're truly not doing a good job medically. And I think the funny thing is, like, when I said I wanted to open a doctor's office in the gym, everybody was like, you can't be all doctors. Don't be business partners with a gym guy. Your value, you went to med school. You should be doubling. Well, how about this? You're probably more of a healthcare provider, truly, in the last 20 years than I was, right? Like, you probably prevented hundreds of people from dying early, and you probably bought people years on the back end. I bought people days beyond an acute illness, but I didn't buy them any health. But now I can truly say, and I did this a couple days ago because I just wanted to entertain my brain. I've probably bought like close to 3,000, 3,500 years in total for our entire patient population, with reversal of diabetes, with reversal of fat disorders in terms of fat metabolism, bone density issues, right? Cancers. I mean, it's like such a big deal that I don't know how it's not more prevalent. But like you said, and you asked the question, why? Because from the minute you graduate college to the minute you die as a doctor, right? If you don't come out of that hallway and like peak, you're never going to change your mind on pharmaceutical delivery and surgery's the way we solve problems. And that's just how you're trained. It's sick care.
If you could kind of remodel stuff, if you had one thing to change about like how even the information is delivered, like where would you start? Like, because I don't want to say that doctors are in on it because
But they are.
Sure, but are they also ignorant that there is an alternative? Like, do they just not like they've been really good at remembering shit from med school and
Yeah.
remembering protocols, but not really critically thinking about like, wow, if I just got this guy 10 pounds of muscle and lost 20 pounds of fat, he's not type 2 diabetic anymore.
Yeah.
Like, do they see that is a actual thing that can occur?
Kind of, but
It's so far out of their skill set.
here's the problem. We give reward to physicians who take care of the sickest people in the most dire situation, and we pay those doctors the most, right? So if you are completely debilitated, you need the most ridiculous surgery, you need the most crazy intervention, you go to the best doctor, right? The highest cost.
World renowned, yeah.
Right? So we start to, in the medical world, idolize the people that take care of the sickest people. It's not fun sometimes, like around the coffee table. Like if you had told me 8 years ago, go sit around the coffee table, like, I cured some lady's diabetes with a little bit of estrogen and testosterone. She started working out 8 hours a week. Right? No way. But if I tell you, hey, double gunshot to the face, domestic, the wife got punched in the face too, and I sewed them back together. I fixed his heart, and we took out her colon, and they're good to go. That's a way better story. And I make a lot more money in the regular medical system doing that than preventing diabetes.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you start to idolize. It's almost like the rock star. When you're a kid, you're like, I want to be a rock star. And you idolize these guys that do crazy shit. And then you get an adult, and you're like, well, I don't really want to live like that.
Yeah, right.
So it's hard, but as a resident, you idolize these attendings that are like covered in blood and
it's romanticized.
Yeah, and it's paid for, right? The big cardiac surgeries, the entire aorta replacement from a big aneurysm, great. That guy's idolized, but he could be operating 90% on people that could have avoided that or just didn't take care of their bodies. I have to say, as an asterisk, and please, and I'll publish this every 2 minutes, there are times where the hospital is perfect. Like, you need it.
Of course.
But we need like 10% of what we have in terms of sick care if we did it the right way, right? Like, if you start saving $100 a month as a 10-year-old, by the time you're 80, you're pretty effing rich. But you got to start as a 10-year-old. So the healthcare world needs to realize, like, if we actually, so to answer your question, I think it needs to be in like the schools, the youth, the pediatric, and the teenagers. Because at this point in time, and I see it every day, the 55s and up are very stuck in like one way of thinking, right? Because they were raised by the people that are in their 80s right now. But the 50s that raised the people that are in their 30s and 40s right now, that mentality is a little still old school, but they're starting to change. So I think the younger and younger we can get into telling, like, exercise is really good. You can lift weights as a kid. You don't need to, but it's not a bad thing. It's not going to stunt your growth. It's actually going to probably do the opposite.
Yeah.
Maybe, kids that are obese nowadays or whatever, we change their eating habits. We're going to save them tons of life on the back end. And I think that's where we need to intervene, right? Because like your kids at home, they watch what you do every day. They watch how you live your life. They watch how Elizabeth. Are your kids obese?
No.
Why? Because they watch you eat.
Yeah, they model behaviors.
Yeah. Right? So I think if we're going to attack anybody, it's really good right now for the people in their 40s and up that we like to service because they're serviceable and they can interact. And those seeking that healthcare, great. But I think if we're going to change the system, it's got to start really young. We need to screen for healthcare in that population up to 20 and 25, because that's really where you're probably going to catch a lot of the 25 to 40-year-old diseases. And they're becoming more prevalent.
Yeah.
And then you got environmental things, right? Like the alcohol, foods, processed foods, ultra-processed carbs. Like, you're just kind of getting attacked all over. But I think if we can get the kids moving, eating well, conscious of exercise, it'll change a lot of healthcare. And I think that's the movement, right? We got to go back to the 60s where it was like kids were on the playground, monkey bars, doing pull-ups, push-ups, an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. Like we have to get it there. And in the adult population, I think we just need dissemination of information, like what we're doing.
Yeah.
This is free. We could tell you the cheat codes. They're right here.
You can Google a lot of it too.
We're giving it to you.
But I think that's also the problem is like, if they're consuming this piece of information versus whatever maybe influencer or other person they follow, well, which one is right? Because at the end of the day, everyone's trying to monetize something.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
we all got to make a living.
Yeah, 100%. So where does that person actually make an informed decision, or how do they arrive at an informed decision about what to do?
Yeah.
Because how many people have you treated now that have come in being like, I tried carnivore, I've done plant-based, or I've done,
tons,
and I'm still where I was.
Yeah.
What do I do? So how do you allow them to kind of come around to the idea that they need to change something? Like, is it sheerly objective? Because I mean, let's also be honest. The system that you have created is very robust, creating these objective measures of this is not my opinion.
Sure.
This is what it is. And you measure against that, against chronic disease, it's like you're trending in that direction.
Right.
And you do have the solve, but how do they feel empowered enough, I guess, to be like, you're right, I need to be under your care?
Yeah, so the first is showing them that data and educating them
because it's theirs.
Because it's theirs.
Yeah.
They own it. And you can't like fake that, right? It is what it is. And then the second thing really is just trust. I truly think it comes down to that. Because once I have a bunch of clients that are openly 100% trust here. And it's amazing, right? And once you build that, the working relationship is incredible, and these people thrive because they trust your plan. I trust them, right? So if I'm like, hey, are you doing your part of the deal? And they're like, yep. Then we can make linear adjustments to medications, to exercise, to nutrition, whatever we need to do. So it's a trust thing. And then the last thing that sometimes helps also is like re-educating them on what they're investing in. Because to them,
it's a good point.
They pay money to an insurance and they never see something given back, right? So that in their mind, I'm just on the healthcare end of the world. So they've been just paying money to an insurance company at premium deductible and getting nothing back. So now I'm another encounter where they're like, well, I'm going to pay and get nothing back. Because they've been taught that if you pay the medical system, you know what you get? Nothing. So I need to re-educate them that, no. I work for you. I don't work for the hospital. There's no one in this room I work for. Me and you work for me and you. But you know who we actually work for? The client. And it's a direct client who's the consumer who would pay for a service that we then give. So it's a rare occurrence that you go to a doctor, you pay them, and you get what they tell you they're going to give you. Because 90% of the time you go in the hospital, you pay, you're told an outcome's going to happen, and then you're like, wait, but I have an infection. My pain hurts. My head's sore, right? Like you don't really get what they're telling you they can deliver. So it's a different type of situation where once you build that trust, once they realize they're actually going to get what they're paying for, so the price equals the value, now we've hit kind of like a euphoric state where that intermingling of data, science, subjectivity, accountability, all that kind of works together, and then we get good results. But those three things, so re-education that what they're paying for will get them something, trust, right? And then just the new age of preventative care you can actually be aggressive about.
I think you said something that really is worth emphasizing, because I'm also a patient of yours, so I'm somewhat biased, but I think the way that you're able to talk about the data at the individual level, which probably doesn't really occur outside, because everything is compared against the norms.
Yeah.
Compared against, like, this is just how everyone gets medicine. Where it's like you are literally delivering a customized, individualized treatment plan that has different features to fit that individual's need base or hierarchy of needs.
Right.
And you can discuss that at the individual level rather than saying, well, you're good for the normal average American.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not good for you. What you said you want.
That's
And
exactly right.
And I think it's just an interesting spin on data.
Yeah.
Because again, we're not saying that this doesn't happen. It's just the context and nuance is so customized to that person sitting across from you. And I think that also encourages the trust, because I forgot the statistics, but coming out of the pandemic, the distrust in medical
Through the roof.
and pharmaceutical and everything, healthcare was at an all-time high.
Yeah.
And maybe rightfully so. I don't, that's not my place to really comment on, but like, people are looking for something different.
Yeah.
They just don't really know where to find it.
They don't.
And on the flip side, there's also businesses now seeing that need, that demand, and be like, oh, well, we can give them this cheaper version of, let's just say, hormones, because that's usually the big, everyone wants to know about hormones,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
like that's the end all
Big
be
thing,
all,
right.
right? And like we have that joke that women usually blame hormones, and men usually just think it's the solution to everything. It's like, just give me more hormones,
Yeah.
right? And like, they're not right or wrong. It's just like, well, what's the context? What's the nuance? But we can also see these other players come into the industry saying, hey, just get your testosterone checked to men, and we'll just give you testosterone.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what about the 50 other things that you should work on?
Yeah.
So.
And the other interesting thing is when people sometimes don't realize what they're investing in. I always say, like, do you have a life insurance policy? And they're like, yeah, of course. Why would I not have a life insurance policy? I'm like, how much? And some people have $1 million, some people have 3, some people have 5, some people have 10. So then I always ask, like, so if you think you're worth that much, but you're not willing to pay
How are you treating it?
Yeah. Like invest in yourself if you're worth that. If you had a car, a vintage Porsche that was worth $5 million, I will guarantee you'd never drive it in the fucking rain. You wouldn't drive it next to a car on the highway that might spit dirt. You would never leave it outside. You'd cover it. Right? You'd never mess with it. But you, worth $5 million, smoke a cigarette, drink a beer. We'll see how my labs do. If I die at 60, no big deal. Great.
Or they'll fix it.
They'll fix it. Right. So personal value is an interesting thing. I used
self-worth.
Yeah, and I used to get in arguments all the time with people at the hospital for billing. I'd be like, we should be billing the exact amount that we could get sued for if I did this operation and just killed them, right? So if I said I'm going to take out your gallbladder, we walked in the operating room and I just sliced your neck and you die, you would get $1 million, you'd get $1 bajillion from the hospital, lawsuit, whatever, because you died. Then why aren't you worth that much for me to fix so that you can live the next day, right? It's like a weird thing. Like egregious malpractice is suable for a good reason. But then there must be a huge amount of value placed on getting somebody to the next day of life.
Yeah, the loss of life has a value to it.
Yeah, but that's an acute, realizable value in that scenario. In here, it's really hard for me to say to somebody, and I tell them the way it is, like, I am not trying to get you not to die tomorrow. I'm trying to get you, if you were going to live till 80 with no dementia, I want you living till 100 with no dementia and fully functional, right? Like, we're buying you time down the road. It's very easy for me to exchange money with you and give you a product that you realize tomorrow. That's different. That's hospital medicine. This is investing in your health so that in 20 years, you're still doing the same thing you're doing today. And no matter what, if you are 80 years old and you ambulate well, think about this. If you're walking down the street and an 80-year-old walks by you and you have your head down, you're not looking, or a 20-year-old walks by you like this and they're injured, who are you going to think's older? The 20-year-old, injured. Why? Because ambulation is how we judge age. So if you can continue to ambulate and carry your body using your muscle mass and your strong bones and you can't fall down and you can move yourself around the world autonomously, you're winning. And that's my goal in healthcare, right? I want people to be able to ambulate till the day they die. Now, can I fix all death? No, right? I'm not God. But can I do my best to make sure we attack the storm prepared? Of course.
Yeah.
Because don't be fooled. And I don't think people realize it. It's a pretty morbid thought. But from the day you're born, right, your trajectory is death. Some people's is instant, right? They don't even make it past the birthing room. Some people's is 10 years, 15, 20. Who knows? But everything in the world around you is trying to kill you. And all we need to know is if you have a baby and you leave it in the woods alone with no mother, it dies. It cannot take care of itself. So the environment around us is always trying to kill us. It's our job to prepare ourselves with the armor, right? You build that in the gym. You build the muscle. You build the integrity of your joints and ligaments. You build the reactivity of your blood vessels. You build your metabolism's memory of sugar use and fat burn. And like, it's not a coincidence that healthier people exist in a gym, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
You just get healthier by exercising. I use the word gym, but whatever exercise facility you want to do. The more you move, the healthier you are. And it's crazy that we need to represent that information to the population, right? Like if you were the medical world and you wanted to fix half of the problems right now, you would just force people, hey,
To work out?
I'm not letting you in the hospital. Like you will not come in the hospital unless you have a really viable excuse if you haven't walked 8,000 steps a day in on average last month, right? Like, nope, you can't even come in if you're not a walker. How fast do you think people would walk? The whole place, there'd be people walking all day because you knew you're not going to get something for free.
It's interesting you say that because one of the topics that we discussed on that other podcast with Anthony was what value does the medical piece serve us?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I mean, a lot, but more or less, it's like if a doctor says, you know what you really need? You don't need these fancy prescriptions and drugs and all that. It's like you just got to walk more.
Yeah.
Concentrate on your nutrition. Like, so you delivering the same, if I say it's like, I'm just selling you something.
Yeah.
If you do it, you are literally
Treating.
getting rid of a sale.
Yeah.
Because you're like, you don't need me.
No.
You know,
No.
but and then people are like, really?
Yeah.
And they almost are frustrated to hear that that's the solution.
Yeah, right.
It's just give me the pill, give me the shot. But like, to your earlier point, is like most people who walk through this gym and appreciate that
Yeah.
to see you are all in anyways. Like they know it's going to be something a little bit more comprehensive than just going to their GP or a specialist.
Yeah. And the cool thing, I mean, it's like if you look at the healthcare system, their grading is chronic disease. If you look at anything, there has to be some grading system, right? If you come to this gym, and I can tell you with full knowledge, the members of the gym that are in exercise, into the nutrition, into the accountability piece, their lab work always looks better, and they are all healthier than the people that come in off the street who don't do it. I don't know how else to say it, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I showed everybody the labs of every client I have on day one, if they were gym naive, and then day whatever, once they're gym experienced, everything's different. It just is. And as a treatment protocol, it's much easier.
Yeah.
But the root of medicine, it's kind of odd to me because you would almost have less chronic illness if we had antibiotics and primary cares and whatever, but you couldn't really do it, but no hospitals, no surgery, nothing like that. You'd find out how important this stuff is pretty quickly. And you'd probably have less chronic disease over time. You can't do that morally. It's impossible just to watch people die. But if we did become more accountable to our preventative care, it's obvious. And it's sad that I don't even know. I feel sometimes dumb that we need to talk about it. Like, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
You know, like if I'm standing at a gas station pumping gas in my face, you're going to stop and tell me, you're going to die, dude. But how many restaurants and bars do you drive by and people are just guzzling booze? Every day.
Every day.
You walk down the aisles at Stop and Shop and there's some overweight family with kids they don't even realize, and they're just like, disease, called Doritos, called everything. Now, I don't know how to exactly get that information to them right now, but I do know between the two of us, we can at least let the people that are interested in it know. And, you know, hopefully one day it becomes more forcible on populations right now that are less abiding by that, because it'll help everybody. But I think the whole push is our children's age group, where we need to really engage them. And I think a lot of younger entrepreneurial gym owners, exercise kind of world people, dietary nutrition, whatever it might be, are starting to realize that. And I think like it's trickling into those lower age groups because people do notice, right? And I think the teenagers now are starting to notice. They want to be in shape, less so purely for vanity, but they want to like be healthy. And I think it's becoming a thing. And I think it'll take off. I do believe we're on the right track, and I would implore and ask everybody, please get to a gym, do some exercise, whatever you can do, go walk, move around, eat healthy, encourage your kids to do the same. And then in terms of day-to-day preventive care, you got to just find the right doctor. We do a lot of remote stuff. Either of us are willing to help on anybody. If you have any issues, concerns, DM, email us.
I mean, it's one of the reasons why we have free consultations.
Yeah.
Like, vet us.
Vet us.
See what we're about.
Come talk.
Like,
yeah, and I think that's half the battle. You just got to get people to talk, right?
Yeah.
And this will become something that separates people. There's no doubt, because I am watching it happen. I'm watching people become better and better and better.
Well, yeah, you know the alternative.
I know the alternative. And the craziest part to me is it's a lot of really high functioning people that seek it out because they want to get better. And those people are going to start to make that gap bigger and bigger in age. And I bet our generation will start to see people hundreds and 110-ish. And then there'll be people still dying at 60 and 70 wondering why. But the reason is we're 45 and we're on it. I'm not letting a heart attack kill me at 55 that I didn't see.
Yeah, right.
Right? And I have the genetic variant of cholesterol. Even doing this, I'm a heart attack waiting to happen. Right? But I'm doing everything I can to avoid that because I know it. Right? So why would I just watch that happen?
That's something that we'll get into. I know we're running probably pretty much at time. But
Marcus, where are we at?
53 minutes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, 53. But, something that we talk about, because it is also part of the dialogue or narrative right now, is the longevity. Live longer, live longer. No one really talks about getting more prime years out of your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
That's a whole nother topic.
And I was discussing about someone else about just like the greatest, the GOAT of each sport.
Yeah.
And no one says, like when you compare the best 2 years of someone who's really good, like a Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
It's a what if.
Right.
What if he didn't get hurt? What if?
Yeah.
But then you look at Walter Payton, who did it for 13 years, and it's like there's no debate anymore.
Yeah.
So how many prime years can you stack? How much greater are those prime years? And then let the decline start.
You know what's interesting? If I had done this business, if I had entered entrepreneurial world prior to my health journey, no way I would have done it. I would have quit. You know what I mean? A year and I would have been like, I am not dealing with that shit. I'm going right back to the hospital.
Yeah, right.
Right? Every 2 weeks I get a paycheck. I don't have to deal with anything. Send me the money, right? But if you have a healthy mind, healthy body, you can take these little stressors. And the reason I'm saying that is, the business statistics clearly, like most businesses just fail, right? But I think it's probably, it's a lot of like mental and physical health of the person starting it.
Without a
Because
doubt.
they can't endure the tragedy of the day-to-day ups and downs to get to that final end result. It's stressful. It's a lot, right? So a lot of it is unrealized. Like in that world, preventative care is probably a big deal. And a lot of people's shortcomings, like you said, the Bo Jackson thing, the what if, like everybody will regret saying what if. There's no human on the planet that has a comfortable time being like, what if, right? That's never a good thing to say to yourself. So eliminate it.
Yeah.
Like right now, if I die tomorrow of a heart attack, I can say out loud, I really, really tried to avoid it. Are there unavoidable circumstances in life? Always. But I will die knowing I tried my best to live long, because that's the ultimate game, right? The 125-year-old who's sitting on their chair, who can still speak English or Romanian or Mandarin, wherever that person exists, won. They won, right? Because if you have your mind and you can ambulate at 120, everybody else's opinion about everything, Jeff Bezos could walk up to that person and be like, hey, I think you should. And that person could be like, you don't even know half the game, right? And that's the true win. And I think longevity with, like you said, quality, right? You need that quality. You want those prime years, but you want them forever.
It's stacked.
Like we have a client, mutual client, and he's winning. He's in his late 70s, runs a giant business, and is starting new businesses. Why? Because he can. And you know what he is? Rich. And you know what he's going to get? Richer.
And he loves what
And
he's
I
doing.
love telling that story because he started from zero. Zero.
Yeah.
Had a bike and no money. Grew up in a terrible neighborhood, right? That's a win. But how can he keep getting richer? There's only one way. At 78, you don't start businesses if you're demented, diabetic, hypertensive, smoking. So when you see him flying around in his private jet, right? Don't blame anything. Give him the credit.
Yeah, right.
He did it, right? But we should all be able to do that. And we can. You just got to stay healthy, and whatever your professional ability is to the max, you can see that through. And never say what if. Good?
That was
Happy?
awesome.
God bless. Adios.
See you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.